Good day, everyone. Jackson Millan, the Wealth Mentor.
Hello, this is Sam Panetta.
And we are here for another episode of Ask Aureus Anything, our weekly Q&A.
We're here for the 29th episode, actually.
It's very exciting, Sam.
29 episodes, that's pretty good, I reckon.
We've had our ups and our downs, but we are still here, we're still persevering, and we are going to deliver a ton of value today. If those of you first time that you are watching, Ask Aureus Anything is our weekly Q&A where we answer your questions about all things money, finance, business, life, cardigans, everything in between. So fire away and we'll be sure to answer your questions.
Yeah, so if you're sitting there and you're watching the live Q&A and you've got a question that you want to ask, just ask, don't be shy. We're going to be here for the next hour. We do collate a number of questions that come through during the week. We obviously get a lot of questions, so we collate them and we answer them. However, if you're live and you're asking a question live, then we're going to concentrate on your question first, and we're going to get that answered for you today.
Yep. The other thing, join the community.
Yes.
We have a community called the Wealth Mentor Community. It's over 1,100 people now. We post regular insights, advice, guidance, tips, traps, everything in between. So make sure you join. It's a free community. So search for the Wealth Mentor Community in Facebook and make sure you register.
Maybe if one of the boys here in the office are kind, they might even post it here for us. So you can just click on the link and it'll take you straight to the page. I don't know if they're going to do that, but hopefully someone's watching this and they do that.
We can only hope. We can only hope.
And join up. We have all sorts of content on there. It's all free and it's just pure value adding. So if you come there and you ask questions, we're going to answer it.
Yep.
It's good for networking as well. So there's a lot of business owners there. There's a lot of professionals and specialists in the different fields. And if you have questions related to essentially anything, we're going to be able to answer those for you on the Wealth Mentor community page.
We've got some really good content on there at the moment, Sam, right? Around getting the most out of your home loan. So a lot of the people who are part of the community have home loans, looking to always shop for a better rate, get a better deal, restructure, continue to build wealth.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff going up there, which is, look, it's one of those things that there's a handful of, when it comes to money, there's a handful of things that are just no-brainers, you know what I mean? And the home loan is just one of those things. Essentially, it's the same no matter which lender you go to. You can essentially always get a better deal and save yourself, thousands or tens of thousands, every year. And you can also do a lot of other fancier things with it as well. So investment properties and developments and stuff like that. So it's something I get excited about finance.
You get a bit carried away.
I do get a bit excited, but look, there's heaps of stuff in there. We put property market updates, stock market updates, business hints and tips, just really cool stuff. So if you're interested, jump on there and you'll see our bearded faces. Nonna's here. Hello, Nonna. She's watching.
Beautiful.
Gary.
Gary, look at that. That link looks like you've hacked the matrix, but that's all right.
That's
Thanks,
the worst link I've ever seen, but it's there and
link.
it's functional. I hope it's functional. So make sure that you guys click on that if you want to go straight to the Wealth Mentor community and join.
I assure you, nothing bad will happen by clicking that link.
I don't know. It might. Something bad might happen. I don't know, but have a crack at it anyway.
60% of the time it works every time. That's what they say. Now, before we dive in any deeper into the abyss, a bit of a general advice warning. So everything we talk about this evening is of a general nature, not tailored to your personal circumstances. So just because you have watched our live event, don't go out and do any punting. Leave the punting to the professionals. So if you want to deal with a professional so you can punt the right way, then make sure you seek professional advice.
That was the worst.
You like that?
That was the worst legal advice I've ever heard. Do you remember when crypto was a thing?
Yeah,
do you remember when guys were punting crypto?
Don't do that.
That died into the abyss so quickly.
Don't do that.
That's so quickly that went.
So that's the I've tried to just to spice up the legal jargon.
That was spicy. That was some spicy legal jargon. Gary Alexander, he says it works. The link works. So if you click on it, it's not going to blow your computer up. You're going to go straight to the Wealth Mentor page. It's going to ask you to join. It's going to ask you a bunch of questions. Write a bunch of questions out, blah, 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 and then Jackson and I are going to let you in.
How was that? What was that?
You can do it. Try it.
I can't do that. I can't replicate that level of larrikin. All right, let's dive in.
All right. So this is something that we just get every single week, nearly every single day. essentially the question is, what is going on with property markets and is it still a good investment? So what's happened over the past 5 or 6 years is that predominantly Sydney and Melbourne in Australia have performed phenomenally. All right, so they've done really well year after year after year after year, and they haven't taken a breather. And a lot of people have made a lot of money off the back of it. But a lot of people have also thought that property markets only go up; they only go one way. Now, over the past 12 months or so, probably even longer now, we've seen that property markets don't only go one way, and we're seeing cities like Sydney and Melbourne and other cities around Australia start to go backwards, and prices are going backwards. That's probably going to happen for the foreseeable future. So if you're out there in the market, it's probably a good time to start accumulating some properties. Is it still a good investment? Yes. Property markets over time will do absolutely fine if you can afford the repayments and you can leverage and get yourself into a good investment portfolio. Then over time you are going to do really, really well. So it's not something that would spook me to not get involved with property. In fact, I probably see it as an opportunity where you can actually accumulate more property at a discount to what it was trading at 12 months ago, 18 months ago.
I'm going to cover this question in a little bit of a different way because we pretty much answer it every week. So I want to try and keep it spicy, like the general advice warning. So when it comes to property, as Sam said, it is cyclical. Things go through peaks and go through periods of stagnation. Australian property has been very stable, unlike property in a lot of other countries. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, we're very much landlocked. People can only live in a finite amount of space that is very centralized around central business districts and metropolitan areas. Unlike, for example, the US, people live absolutely everywhere, even though there's towns that have extremely small populations. It's not as common in Australia, even though we've got a lot of land. Now, further to that, the economy's constantly been growing and thriving. So because of that, people have money. Essentially, they bid up the price of property because they can afford to pay it, and there's a push of demand. Now, the way to look at this, there is no right or wrong answer. The first thing that we should all be doing in terms of the goal is that if you're looking at any investment, investments are just a vehicle to get you to a destination. Now, the first thing is, what is the destination you're trying to work towards? And for most of our clients, the two key goals that we're trying to work towards to, I guess, achieve financial freedom is having your own home fully paid off, and then being able to have enough investments or realizable income or assets that can allow you to have freedom of how you spend your time. So until you've got goal number one sorted, let's not worry too much about goal number two. So if you don't own your home yet, go out and define how much your ideal home will cost. This isn't the beachside mansion, the aspirational home. This is the family home that's modest enough that you can actually still attain. So jump on Domain, jump on real estate, go and find out what it costs today and put a dollar figure on it. Then work out how much you actually need to have in terms of wealth, savings or assets, whatever it may be, to essentially be able to go and buy that property, and also how much income you require. Once you've got this now allows you to objectively choose the right investments. So once again, you can then assess, is property a good investment, a viable investment vehicle to allow you to build your wealth to get that deposit to buy your dream home? Or in another scenario, if you've already got your dream home or the forever home, then is further investment property going to allow you to pay it off faster to achieve goal number two? So this is something that we need to work through. This is something we do extensively with our clients. If you have these questions, if these are things that are top of mind for you, you want help doing the numbers, we have access to software and tools that can model all of these things for you. So feel free to reach out to us. We can kind of help you start building that plan, that roadmap that can help you, I guess, have peace of mind and certainty around achieving those outcomes, turning those dreams to goals.
It's one of those things, isn't it? Because property is so expensive, but buying a home and having your home paid off by the time you retire, it's really important because if financially, and this is, a lot of younger people do it, they'll rent vest. So they'll rent where they want to live and they'll buy investment properties where they can afford to buy investment properties. And that's not a bad idea. A lot of our clients do it. But here's the thing. There comes a point where you do want to own your own home, as Jackson said, and you want to have it paid off. And moving home when you're 25 or 35, 45, doesn't matter. But when you're 85 years old and you have to move house every 12 months and you're paying rent and the price of rent's going up and you're on the pension, you're going to struggle. Do you know what I mean? So you want to make sure that there comes a point that whatever it is you're working towards, at the end of it, you've got some assets that generate you an income and you've got your home paid off.
Exactly right.
Alrighty.
Cool. Now, those of you who are watching, thanks for joining us. We've got Rog, we've got Peter, we've got Rocco, And we've got Pasquale. Thanks for the love, Pasquale. That's fantastic.
That's not how you say it. Pasquale.
Pasquale. Come on, mate. I know you're from Narrowena, but you're more cultured than that.
No, that's good, Pete. That's good, mate. We appreciate it. Oh, here we go.
Here we go. Peter Acuri. Bear Grylls and Ned Kelly Finance. How are you boys listening to you in my car stuck in traffic on the bridge?
You're the best, Pete. You are the best.
Pete. And Pasquale, love your work, boys.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for joining us.
We're gonna have to go out there one day into his coffee shop.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to.
Fantastic. Why don't we do a live from the coffee shop?
We'll do a live from the coffee shop, Pete.
Fantastic.
All right,
very good. Guys, if you've got any questions, fire them at us. We're here to answer your questions. Anything that's top of mind. There's no such thing as a silly question. We're here to add value. Anna, thanks for joining us. Now, next question. What is the best advice you can give someone who wants to improve their budget? Now, there's a couple of ways to look at this. Your budget we need to evaluate where it is right now. There's typically 3 places it can be. You can be in deficit, meaning that you are spending more than what you are earning. You can be at break even, or essentially parity, where you're living to your means. And you are in a position of surplus, where you've got savings and positive cash flow every single month. Now, if you are in negative cash flow, you need to work out how you can fill the void, essentially, how you can hemorrhage the bleeding. So the best thing to do is firstly come to terms with your cost of living. So utilize what we refer to as a personal profit and loss. If you want access to a really good tool that we've developed, happy to share it with you. And it's essentially just putting everything into a calculator of all of your income, all of your expenses, and working out what the net position is. Now, it's then going through and identifying anything that you can remove to get you to a break-even position. So whether that means getting rid of subscriptions you don't need, negotiating your interest rates with your home loan, with your personal loans, with your credit cards, contacting your utilities providers and negotiating with them. All of these providers can be negotiated with. I had a client the other day who was in this position. We gave them a script to make a very simple 10-minute phone call to their bank, and instantly they were able to get thousands and thousands of dollars in annual savings off the home loan from 10 minutes. So compounded savings over the rest of their life could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's about getting from that loss position to getting to break even. If you are in that position or you are in break even, the next step is, once you've gone through optimizing, is looking for new ways to produce income. Whether that be selling stuff that you don't need, chucking it on Gumtree, getting rid of it, looking for a side hustle, particularly in a service-based offering. Whether it be if you're experienced in your craft, do some consulting, do some coaching, do some tutoring, whatever it may be. Drive Uber if you have to. I have a client that makes over $100,000 a year in Uber. They work hard for it, but they're making good cash. So they're able to remedy their cash flow because of that. And if you are in a surplus position, you should still look to optimize, but you should be committing that surplus to be working for you. So have a goal that you're working towards. Don't just create surplus for the sake of it. And once again, if you want to create more surplus to achieve your goals faster, there's always other ways that you can be improving your income. Renegotiating your contract, going out there and hunting for new business if you're a business owner. We get this all the time, don't we, Sam? For employees, say, well, I earn what I earn. I can't get any more than my annual review, CPI plus 1% or whatever. I had a client recently, we had a conversation. We put together a business case around all of the value that he's provided to his organization, basically to the dollar. And he's gone back and had a conversation. Now, he's not 100% sure whether his business is in a position to be able to pay him any more money, but he's now basically refreshed his resume. So if his employer says no, he now has all of this great information to be able to negotiate his value with a new employer. We believe that it's going to be very easy for him to negotiate at least a 20% uplift on his salary. So these are some things that you've got to be mindful of. You've got to think outside the square.
And that's the whole point, thinking outside the square. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the times when it comes to budgeting and cash flow, people say budget harder, budget harder, budget harder. So, cut costs, cut costs, cut costs.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. You can only cut so many costs. So it's about understanding what your end goal is and what you're actually trying to achieve, and then working out how much surplus in an income you need and how long it's going to take you to get to that goal. So I done this the other day. I looked at it. I set myself X amount of goal and I said, this is what I want to achieve. And no matter how much I cut my budget up, I can't cut it low enough to get the surplus for me to achieve that goal. So you've got to reverse engineer and say, all right, we need to earn more money. So, my family, my wife and I, we need to bring more income into the home. So what does that do? It ties back into the Aureus and into the business, and we need to, produce more revenue, and you take it down through the business metrics for me to be able to take more money home. Now, these are one of those things. Anyone can do that. Do you know what I mean? But it's about understanding your goal and then looking at your top line and then how that feeds into your bottom line. It's look, it's a pretty simple exercise. Most people don't do it.
People overlook it. And one of the reasons why is because most of us have these beliefs that budgeting is a bad thing. Budgeting is basically about living on cornflakes for dinner, beating yourself up and not spending anything, and then basically getting disappointed when you don't stick the course. We need to firstly identify our spender type. For those of you who have read the book, will be very familiar with it. Those of you who haven't, if you join the Wealth Mentor community, you get a free copy. So jump on there and make sure you grab one. And when you identify your spender type, because you got to realize that you've had decades of hardwired spending behaviors that have been deeply ingrained into your way of life. So it's unrealistic to think that today you're going to go, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to go do things completely different than what I've ever done. It's never going to work that way. It might work in a 1% of the time, but 99% of the time you're going to fail. And then you're going to become disheartened from trying again. So it's about identifying where you are, trying to create a structure and a strategy that works for you, and then essentially just continuing to iterate and improve over time. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and we have a spreadsheet, and if anyone wants one, anyone who's watching, just ask us and we'll flick it over to you, and you guys can fill it out yourself and you can use it for your own budget.
Yeah, we've done a lot of benchmarking as well. So we understand exactly what you should be spending compared to your peers. So it's always good to get an idea of what everyone else is doing too.
Correct. All right, that's good. That's an interesting topic. All right, this one's a really simple one, and it's one that I get all the time, so I thought I'd cover it off really quickly for anyone who's watching. A lot of my clients ask me, how long will it take for me to get a pre-approval for my home loan so I can go out and buy a property? Look, typically you can get one from the time the application's submitted until when you're ready to go, sort of 1 to 2 weeks. So depending on what the bank's turnaround times are, and depending on how complex your situation is, if it's really simple and the banks are really fast, we can knock it over in under a week. If you're complex and the banks are a bit slow, probably takes about 2 weeks. More importantly, it's about understanding that you need to have a pre-approval before you go out there and you start making offers on a property. I've seen people with no pre-approval go to an auction, bid on a property, go there with a couple $100 grand, $200 grand, buy this $2 million property, go to the broker and say, hey, I need a loan for 1.8 so I can buy the rest of this property. The bank says no, deposit gone. That's a quick way to lose a couple $100 grand. Don't do that. Get a pre-approval and make sure that the banks will actually lend you the cash before you go to the auction in your pajamas on Saturday.
We've heard some stories.
Do not do that.
It's not good.
No.
But look, I think it also gives you it makes it real as well. Once you've got the pre-approval and the hunt's on, basically. And it kind of there is a time frame before a pre-approval expires, right, Sam?
Yeah, depending on the bank, some do 3 months, some do 6 months.
Yep. So basically, it gives you a certain time frame in order to get the outcome concluded.
Yeah.
So it basically, hopefully, pushes you to take that next step and get your foot on the ladder or continue to advance your wealth journey.
Correct. If anyone's watching, if you guys have any questions, make sure to ask. If you'd like to like and share as well, so there's other people and maybe your friends and family might have some questions. They might get a bit of value out of this. So don't be shy. If you are there, have a crack. We're not gonna bite.
All right. So next question: what are the key things I need to consider when taking out insurance? All right. Cool. So there's a lot of different types of insurance that can be considered. Most of the time when we talk to our clients who are individuals, we're considering 4 key types of insurance. We're considering life insurance, if you pass away, basically covering any debts and replacement of income in your absence. Secondly is total and permanent disability. So if you are totally and permanently disabled, it basically provides any debt repayment, any medical expenses, and also any shortfall in income. Thirdly is critical illness or trauma insurance. If you suffer a critical illness such as a cancer, heart attack, stroke, it covers the medical costs and potentially the lifestyle costs associated with that happening. And then finally, there is income protection. So it's basically a catch-all. If you can't work due to any injury or illness, it will have you covered for up to 75% of your income. Now, The first things first that you need to consider is your needs and wants. What are you actually trying to protect? Is this because you've just got a young family, you've got young kids? Is it because you've got a lot of debt? Is it because of a business partnership that if something happened to you, your business couldn't continue? We need to consider this situation. Then what we want to consider is what we want to see happen in that situation. We want all the debt to be paid off, just some of it, just the debt on the home. And how much income do we want to have replaced and for how long? This is rather complex. And ultimately, it's best facilitated by a risk management expert who knows how to take you through this exercise and then identify how much cover you actually require. After that, we then need to select the structure. Are we going to have it inside super? We're going to have it outside super. There's pros and cons for both. And then finally, we then need to pick the insurer. Are there certain things that you are concerned about? For example, if you've got a family history of heart attacks or cancers, then we want to make sure that we have better definitions in those areas. We then need to work out pricing and all of those types of things. So once again, we put a lot of time and effort into this. Most people overlook it. They think they can just jump onto an iSelect or one of those comparison sites, type in, I need life insurance, and select $1 million and basically get it in a couple of minutes. Typically, the faster it is, if you're getting automatic acceptance, it's not a great policy. Most providers will ask you the questions at some point. You want them to ask you the questions up front. The last thing you want them to do is to ask your family all of the questions, God forbid if you were to pass away. So make sure you get good advice around these things. The good thing about insurance is that insurance, similar to when you get a home loan, the insurance provider that is ultimately selected for you pays the risk specialist a commission for the service, meaning that in a lot of instances you don't need to pay. So it's worthwhile reevaluating, looking at what you've got, because most people do have insurance inside their super. So just kick the tires on it, have an understanding of your risks, and at least then you can work out your next best steps from there.
It's one of those things, that it's really important. It's too complicated for you to work out on your own.
Yeah.
I couldn't work out on my own, and I work in the finance industry. You had to get an expert like Jackson to come in and sort it all out for me.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It's like superannuation. You have to do it. You don't know how to do it yourself. I can guarantee it. Those guys that you see on TV, they're like, oh, I'll get life insurance in 60 seconds, give me $5 and we'll do it. That's no good, stuff. That's not worth the paper it's written on.
Ultimately, insurance is a risk management strategy. You're paying for peace of mind. And you're basically paying to ensure that, God forbid, if anything was to happen, your family or yourself are going to actually be able to receive the benefit at the end. So it pays to get the right advice quality with these things.
All right, very good. Let's move on. If anyone's there got any questions, make sure to yell out to us. All right, so this is a real common misconception that people have. So I get this often. I've been asked, I have a fixed rate on my home loan. Can I break a fixed rate? So a lot of people think because you've got a 2-year fixed rate or a 3-year fixed rate or a 5-year fixed rate or something like that on your home loan, that you can't break it and that you're stuck with that particular bank or with that particular property for the next 2, 3, or 5 years. It's not the case. So you can break a fixed rate. Typically, there'll be a fixed rate break cost depending on a lot of things, depending on how long is left on the fixed rate, depending on what the interest rate is fixed at, depending on how big the loan is, and depending on what the interest rates are today compared to what they were when you fixed the home loan. But it can be broken. So if you needed to sell a property that had a fixed rate on it, you can do that. If you were looking to refinance to get a better deal on your home loan and it had a fixed rate on it, if the mathematics made sense, you could still do that. Or if you needed to refinance to release equity or to do any manner of things, then you can still do that. So whilst having a fixed rate is a small hurdle, if you're looking to do finance style stuff, it's not the end of the road. And a lot of people really seem to think that it is the end of the road. So I just thought I'd chuck that question in there this week, because I get that question nearly every week.
The big one's about the cost, right? And best thing to do is to call your bank and find out what the break cost is.
Correct. So it would have to make sense, right? So let's say you had a $500,000 home loan and the cost to break was $500. But if you did break it and you refinanced to a much better rate and the savings were $5,000, then still at the end of the 12 months or something like that, you're still going to be better off by 4.5 grand. So it makes sense. But if the mathematics were the other way, whereas the break cost was 5 grand and you were only going to save $500 a year, then you wouldn't do it. You would just stay put. So it's about someone actually crunching the numbers on it and saying, is this worth it? Yes or no. Once you've actually done the numbers, it's very clear. It's very clear whether or not you should be doing it.
Alrighty.
Hello, Lauren.
Alrighty. How can I best plan for my retirement? Good question. So most people don't think about this until it's too late. A lot of the people that we get reaching out to us for retirement planning are 5, 10 years out. And it's great that they're starting then, but it isn't a whole lot of time left to plan. And for many people that we've spoken with, sometimes there's only so much that you can have left to do given the short time frame. So the best thing you can be doing is getting a bit of an understanding of where you are right now and what your projected superannuation is going to look like, assuming that you keep doing what you're doing. Now, best thing to do is trace down all of your superannuation. So create a MyGov account, jump on, make sure all your super's there. And if you do have more than one account, you should be getting advice around consolidating it. If you don't want the advice, at least go to the fund that you want to select and just roll them all together, but just be mindful that you will be losing any insurance benefits associated with that. So if you've got any medical conditions or you're concerned about it, make sure you get advice. Once it's all together in one fund, you then can go onto the Money Smart website and search for the superannuation projection tool. This actually allows you to put in your super balance, your current age, your contributions, your investment strategy, and it'll actually give you a projected outcome. And what it also allows you to do is to do some different scenarios. So you can say, what happens if I put an extra $500 a month? Or what if I changed from a balanced investment to a growth investment or a high growth investment? It'll actually compare the different outcomes. What it'll also do is allow you to do a very simple superannuation fee comparison as well. So for example, we helped a client the other day compare their fees, and just through making some small changes to a different superannuation provider, between their current age and retirement, there was over $100,000 in fee savings without taking any additional risk. So it was pretty much a no-brainer. So the whole idea of all of this is just kicking the tires on it, seeing what the outcome is going to be, and then working out what you can be doing to kind of optimize your path to retirement. Now, the sooner you start making additional contributions, the more impact it's going to have, because compounding works best over time. But it's just about kind of working out how you're tracking, seeing what the additional scenarios will do, and then just acting upon it. It is also worthwhile making sure that you do get the right guidance, because there are some tax considerations that can really help you, supercharge your path to your retirement plans. So it's worthwhile just kind of looking into those as well. Something we can help you with.
Super is one of those things, like it's something that you've got so much time. Let's say you start working at 25 and you're going to work until you're 65. That's 40 years, and 40 years is plenty enough time to create wealth, right? And over a 40-year period, it's actually relatively simple to create wealth. So you just don't need to do many things different to what you're doing today. Let's say you're 25 years old. You just need to make good decisions, good small decisions with things like your super over that 40-year period, and you will retire a multimillionaire. So it's one of those things that you don't have to do anything phenomenal. There's no Wall Street trading or anything like that. Just keep investing your money in good investments over that 40 years, and you're guaranteed to get a good result.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right. So if anyone's here and have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. All right. So this is something I had this week. I had an international student who's over here in Australia studying at the moment. They've reached out to me and they've essentially said, do you have any advice for someone at university who is looking to get ahead? I guess we do, mate. We could go deep into this question. It's sort of where do you start? Do you know what I mean? It's when you're at uni and you're at the start of sort of your career and you want to get ahead. It's, I guess, what do you want to achieve, and then working backwards from there. If you haven't started working yet, I'd probably suggest the best thing you can do is do something that you love, because if you're doing something that you love, it's relatively easy to do it well. And when you do something you love, you do it well, and you do it for long periods of time, you'll eventually earn very good money from doing that. And then once you're earning very good money, your options open up, and that's when you can start investing in property and shares and businesses and things like that. So I think getting that first core question right of what do I love to do, and going out and doing that, that'd probably be the best piece of advice I could give someone at uni.
Yeah. The advice I'd give is learn how to sell. So honestly, the amount of graduates that I've encountered, so to give you some background, I never went to university. Sam never went to university before we started running our careers. I basically finished high school. I bluffed my way through, got my HSC, got terrible results. Just said, hey, I don't even have enough scores to be able to get into the course that I'd want to get into. So I go, stuff it, I'm going to go get a job. So I went and got a job in a call center, and essentially we were selling insurance on the phone. And ultimately, within that business, they had a financial advice business, very Wolf of Wall Street-esque, without the throwing of midgets. And then I said, look, I'm interested in this industry because I want to help people and I want to help people achieve their goals. But the way that I was observing it was being done looked fundamentally wrong. But what it taught me is a really valuable skill of how to sell. Not necessarily just sell to people, but to sell myself. To be able to position myself in the right light, to be able to get any opportunity that I want to. And at the age of 19, I become a financial advisor because of just sheer perseverance. I just kept going until someone said yes. And there was plenty of no's along the way, but there was somebody who said yes, gave me a shot, and here I am today. As a university graduate, you typically do not leave university with very good soft skills. You typically don't have the ability to sell yourself. You don't know how to work in a team. All you have is the academic backing that the university provides you. So you should be investing in your soft skills, in being able to sell, being able to communicate, being able to position yourself in such a way where you can go and capture those opportunities that you've studied so hard to gain the technical knowledge around, so then you can actually add value to society.
It's a good point, eh? It's one of those things. I guess I didn't even make it as far as Jackson to going to year 12. I got kicked out of year 10. I still remember the conversation with the principal. It wasn't pleasant. But by the time most people are graduating university at circa 25, I'd been working for 10 years. I started working when I was 15, so I started buying properties, buying shares, and things like that. So I had a considerable head start on someone who hadn't worked on all. One, you had to bust my ass for those 10 years, but it's one of those things that I think a lot of time with uni students, they think that getting to the end of uni is sort of the end, but it's not. That's sort of just the start. Like you're just essentially walking to the starting line on the racetrack.
Here's the thing.
If that makes sense.
I think the education system gives you a false sense of security that once you've got your degree, everything's going to be fine. And the amount of graduates that take so long to get jobs after they've graduated it's really hard. And unless you've got those soft skills, unless you've got that edge, unless you've got that hunger, that fire in your belly to go out and hunt opportunities, they're not going to be there. And look, the other advice that I'd give you is go hunt for mentors. People who are in positions of power really put value in people who show initiative. If you reach out and you're looking for mentors and you ask them to pick their brain and you want to learn from them without expecting to get a paycheck and that kind of thing, then you are going to go a long way, because these people are not only going to train you or they're going to provide their knowledge to you, but they're likely, if they like you and they see potential in you, they'll offer you opportunities. And
that's so true.
It's going to take you a long way.
That's so true.
Much further than what your university degree will, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, so sort of went into the abyss on that one. Good. That was a good question.
G'day, Sally. Thanks for joining us. Now, for those of you who don't know Sally,
you got to check out Sally's book.
Yeah, Sally's book. I don't want to use the expletive that was in the book title, but love the bleep out of life. We had Sally on the podcast. She's actually going to be featured on our podcast next month, third week of September. So make sure you tune in then. We'll be releasing some teasers soon.
It's the only podcast I haven't been a part of.
Gary was on the podcast.
Gary was so don't And I think Gary's me. Don't be confused and think he's a little bit taller than I am, and his beard's not as thick. So don't get Gary confused with myself.
Good stuff. All right.
All right. So
Okay,
it's
so
a tricky one.
this is a tricky one. Every month I get further into debt, and I don't know what to do. Where can I start? So this kind of links back to the budgeting question. Most people fall further into debt because they have a cash flow issue. They are at a budget deficit and they're trying to bridge the gap between their living expenses and their earnings. And the only way for that to do that is the money's got to come from somewhere is debt. Typically starts with credit cards, then it progresses to personal loans, then it kind of spirals out of control. And we call this financial battle stage. So ultimately, the first thing you need to do is circle back to that personal profit and loss. You need to face the harsh reality of your situation. You need to look at doing that damage control to remove those things that you don't need from your budget. You need to negotiate all of your expenses wherever possible. And you've got to realize that if you've got debts, credit cards and the like, you have the ability, the permission to go and negotiate. These aren't, the whole idea is that from the bank's perspective, they are at risk. There is nothing stopping you from going out and defaulting on those loans or declaring bankruptcy. The barrier to you doing that is relatively low. So the banks want to do the right thing by you to ensure that you don't end up in that position because they're not going to get anything. So if you're in a tough spot, call your financial institution. Do a bit of shopping around first, jump onto the comparison site, say, hey, I've seen this credit card that has this interest rate. You are charging me this. I'm in a bad spot right now. I'm doing my best I haven't missed a payment or I've been doing my best. What can you do to reduce my rate? Because I want to stay with you. And most of the time they will discount that on the phone, or if they're not going to, ask to speak to their manager, the manager will. Now, once you're in that position, you got to hunt for more income. You got to sell stuff you don't need, vehicles you don't use, toys that that aren't a necessity. You need to look for a side hustle. You need to ask for a promotion. You need to do whatever you need to get to a position where you can smash those debts, because you've got two choices. Three, really. You are going to keep burying your head in the sand. It's only going to exacerbate and make the problem worse. You're going to declare bankruptcy and give up when you're screwed for 7 years, maybe even 10 years, depending on what you're trying to do. Or you pull your socks up, you basically do what you need to, and you get yourself out of the hole. So you just need to make a decision.
Look, it's one of these things, and this is a little bit harsh, but it's when someone's really struggling financially, a lot of the time, and there is extreme circumstances where it's essentially out of someone's hand, but most of the time, when someone's struggling financially, they're struggling because of their lifestyle and because of their habits. Do you know what I mean? And when we tell some people, well, you need to change your lifestyle, you need to change your habits in order to get a different outcome financially. A lot of people don't want it. They don't want to downgrade the car or downgrade the home, or sell the jet skis or any of these bits and bobs, or not go on 4 holidays a year or whatever it is. They've become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, but you have to. Sometimes you need to take a step back, get back on top of things, and then have another crack at it. But it's not. How should I put it? This isn't so much of a financial problem as it is an emotional and a mental problem that keeps people struggling with money, I think.
Yeah, and look, and Marcel's joined us. G'day, Marcel. Marcel, from a behavioural standpoint, is an expert around all of this stuff.
Yeah, there you go. What a coincidence.
In behavioural change. And we've spoken about this at length. And there's literally there's most likely a root cause to the problem that people just aren't prepared to face yet. So sometimes the hardest part is just waking up and smelling the roses. If you can see light at the end of the tunnel, although it may be difficult, then you have the ability, you stand the chance of perseverance. But just ignoring it is not going to make your problems go away.
I think Warren Buffett's business partner, I can't remember his name at the moment, but I think he said years ago, if you got all the money in the world and you divided it equally amongst everyone, that within 10 years, it would all be back in the same hands. So the rich would be rich again and the poor would be poor again because of their habits that have made it that way to start with. So it's an interesting theory.
It is. Yeah, scary. Yep, Marcel, beliefs and attitude is exactly right.
No, that's it. That's it. G'day. Marcel. All right, so this is a good one. Access the equity in my property to build a granny flat. Assuming that you have enough equity in your property and assuming that you have enough cash flow to service the additional debt, then yes, you can access equity in the property to do plenty of things, but one of them is to build a granny flat. And a lot of people around here on the Northern Beaches where we live, it's relatively large blocks with relatively older homes at the front of the block. So a lot of people just chop the backyard up, put a granny flat in there, and around here, a nice granny flat will get them, $500 or $600 a week in rent. $150,000 loan will probably cost them, I don't know, $100 or less a week in repayment. So it's a good way to put a cheeky $500 a week in your pocket. Loans are really simple. Banks want to see equity and they want to see cash flow. So assuming you have enough equity and cash flow, you can essentially do anything with borrowed money. So it's an easy answer, that one.
It's a good strategy, high yields in terms of comparing to the debt that you need to build a granny flat.
Yeah.
So if you can do it and you're willing to sacrifice that
the backyard,
then by all means.
We see a lot of investors do it. So the investor might have a nice home without a granny flat on there, but their investment properties might build the house at the front, chop it up, put a flat at the back. The numbers stack up. Do you know what I mean? So I can't think it's a horrible thing to do.
Awesome. All right. Now, I'm self-employed. Do I have to pay super? Now, the rules have changed and the answer is technically yes. So ultimately, if you are a sole trader, you don't have to, but you really should. You should treat yourself as an employee because otherwise you're going to get to your golden years. You're not going to have anything in super. If you're a sole trader, you probably haven't built an asset that can be sold. So therefore, you're really just working for creating a job for yourself. If you're a company, you have to pay yourself superannuation, irrespective of how you slice and dice it. There's some creative things that you can do to try and avoid having to do it. But technically, if you're paying yourself a wage, you're taking director's drawings, and you do have to pay superannuation on those amounts. The whole idea of this is about trying to ensure that self-employed individuals don't fall behind the rest of the population. Because you've got to realise that majority of business owners are already underpaid in comparison to their employed peers. They're working longer. They are essentially they're trying their best to try and achieve this financial freedom and have this flexibility. And if they're also not paying their superannuation, there's a lot of disadvantages to being a business owner. So ultimately, the government wants to ensure that you're not going to work your entire life in your business. Obviously, you're trying to work to minimize tax a lot of the time. And then you get to your golden years, and then you're reliant on the government for them to have to support you. So it's one of these things, they're constantly shaking this up. So you should really be looking at ways that you can get your cash flow to a position where you can be affording to do it each and every single month. Now, treat yourself like an employee. Back to that previous exercise. See how much you're going to need in retirement and work to that instead of just trying to stick to the minimums. Because it's ultimately about creating a lifestyle for yourself.
I think you touch on an even deeper point there. Why do you think a lot of self-employed people don't earn the same amount of money as their PAYG peers do?
I think Marcel hit the nail on the head. It's beliefs. So we have hardwired belief systems that we create from when we're very, very young. And we have this preconceived notion that business owners get the flexibility and can be very, very successful, are constantly always working towards this end game, but have to sacrifice along the way. And ultimately, it's this principle of paying yourself last. You pay your rent first, you pay your staff, you pay all your bills, and then you take what's left. And it's this fundamental belief that ultimately guides many business owners to not achieving their fullest potential. The thing is, that's why Sam and I first started this business, we set up our salary straight away. Although it was less than what we were earning in our previous businesses, it was still something. And ultimately was enough for us to cover our lifestyle expenses. As Sam said before, not really kick all of these goals that we want to achieve personally, but it was a foundation that we could still feel fulfilled and have a good lifestyle, so we could have the energy to come here and drive this business forwards every day.
Correct. When everyone gets paid on payday, Jackson and I get paid on payday as well, the same as everyone else. So the company's the company and the business is the business, but Jackson and I have roles in this business and responsibilities that we need to attend to, and we get remunerated based on that. But a lot of business owners don't do that. They especially, they don't have that monthly salary come in, or that monthly bonus or whatever it might be. They just, as you said, they take the crumbs, they take whatever's left. They don't know if they're going to have a good month or if they're going to have a bad month. And that's a really disheartening way of doing business, because you're not going to have good month in business. That's not how it works. Sometimes you have fantastic months, sometimes you don't, but your personal take-home income shouldn't fluctuate with the performance of the business on a day-to-day basis.
We work with most of our clients to build an emergency fund in their business so they can pay themselves a wage consistently, irrespective of the time of year or whatever. Like most people have a really quiet December, January. But the last thing you want to do is in the most expensive time
when you
of
need
the
all
year
the money
for you not to get paid, or if you go on holidays and you're not paying yourself. So I couldn't think of anything worse. I'm overseas on a holiday, supposed to be enjoying myself, and I can't even afford to go and do the things that I want to do. Go out to a nice restaurant or go on a tour or whatever. It defeats the purpose. If you should be rewarding positive activity, positive behavior. So that's the thing. Pay your super. We pay super, don't we, Sam?
We do pay super, mate.
Yeah. Although I'd love to have that 9.5% to do other things with, it's going to super. I'm going to enjoy it when I've got a grey beard.
You're going to look like Gandalf.
I will. I'm going to be the wealth wizard, I tell you.
All right, we're off track. If anyone who's watching has any questions, make sure to comment, throw them at us.
Happy to answer questions about wizardry.
I want to say something smart ass, but I just can't think of anything. I can't think of anything. If I had something, I would say it.
You're not wise enough, Sam.
I'm not wise enough. No, it must be. All right, so really easy one. What is an offset account and how does it work? This is something that I get all the time. So typically today, if you have a home loan with a variable rate, you probably have an offset account attached to it. Now, the simplest way that I can explain what an offset is, it is basically a regular transaction account that is attached to your mortgage that reduces the amount of interest that you pay. And this is how it reduces it. Let's say you have a home loan of $500,000 and then you have an offset account that's got $100,000 in it. At the end of the month, your repayments or your interest bill on your repayment will be calculated at $400,000. So $500 that you owe minus the 100 that's in your offset leaves 400,000, and that's the amount that you're going to pay interest on. All right. If you have principal and interest repayments, then your repayment will stay exactly the same, except your interest portion will go down and your principal portion will go up. If you make interest only repayments, then your entire repayment will go down. All right. So we'll improve cash flow. Think of it this way. If you had a $500,000 interest-only home loan with $500,000 in your offset account, your monthly repayment would be zero. Yeah. All right. So it's a little bit difficult for people to wrap their heads around the first time, but once you get it, you'll understand that's a really cool and powerful tool. Yeah. Nearly all of our clients have offset accounts. They work in really well with our wizardry budgeting, and it helps get some great results.
Yeah, I was talking to a client about this today. So they were lucky enough to be phenomenal business owners, created a great business, and have basically offset their entire home loan. They're on principal and interest home loan though. So they go, Jackson, we've paid off, we've got all of our money offset, but we're still paying this amount every single month to the bank. Well, the fact is that 100% of that repayment is now paying off their principal. So it's one of those things that you need to understand the strategy. In their situation, it may be worthwhile considering if they wanted to free up the cash flow, actually turning their home to being interest only, meaning that the debt's paid off in full because you've got the amount sitting there in offset against it, but the facility is still there to be used. So for example, if they decided they wanted to draw all that money out and go buy another investment property, then they have the ability to do that, the freedom to do that. All right, so Teresa, G'day, Teresa.
Hello.
I read that a super fund has to refund customers that they have overcharged over the last few years for financial advice that was never provided. If I recently closed this account, am I still entitled to a refund, or should I contact the superannuation fund? Great question, Teresa.
Excellent question.
So, first things first, because we handled the transfer for you, there was no advice fees on that fund, I assure you. But in any case, if you were in a position where you've done a rollover yourself and there was advice fees that were on there, the financial institution that had charged you should have sent you a letter. Now, in that letter, it should have stipulated basically what the situation had occurred, the amount that you can expect to get refunded, and if they'd tried to put it into whatever the fund was, but it wasn't there, then they should be asking you for details for that to actually be transferred into your new fund. Now, typically, most of these financial institutions that are doing these refunds are doing so under the instruction of the Royal Commission. And because of this, they need to be reporting the findings and the outcomes back to the powers that be. So therefore, they can't really be getting away with it. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it going amiss. In any case, if you are concerned, yes, definitely call up the old superannuation funds. Basically say, hey, look, I've heard about this in the Royal Commission, in the media at the moment. Am I going to be entitled to a refund for any fees that were paid without receiving service? So if you don't get any outcomes there, the best thing to do is to contact the Financial Ombudsman Service. It's a free service. It's basically there to ensure that you reinforce your rights. You can explain to them the situation. They can help you do some research and even help navigate the situation on your behalf. Food for thought, but hopefully that helps. Great question.
It's even deeper than this, right? On that question, it's with all these changes that are going on in financial advice at the moment. We're going to look back on this in a few years, right? So a lot of these financial advisors had been charging clients and not providing any advice. You know, a lot of people didn't even know they had a financial advisor, but someone was collecting fees for it. Now, that's absolutely ridiculous, but that was standard practice in the industry for a very long time, 100 years, right? So it's only now that it's ceased. In a few years, we're going to look back at that and you go, that was absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe people used to do that. Just feel for thought. Just feel that the world's changing, the industry's changing.
To give you some context, the main reason why most people ended up in these arrangements is because big corporates basically used to not want to manage their own superannuation funds. So as such, they'd have these advisors come in, they'd say, hey, we'd set up the fund for you. We're not even going to charge you. We're actually going to pass on all of the costs to the members. But as a result of the cost, we're going to make ourselves available to provide value and service and advice as needed. We'll come to seminars, we'll do workshops, all of this kind of stuff. Sounds great in theory, but ultimately these advice firms would only service the managers and the executives and all of the kind of meaty employees as part of the group, and everyone else would basically be paying for nothing. And how they got away with it for such a long time is that there was no real disclosure obligations. The only way you could find out is it wasn't even typically disclosed on the member statements. You actually had to call and ask. So it's only now that there's new legislation in place that all of this stuff needs to be reported. There needs to be transparency. So it's just one of those things. Kick the tires on it. It's worth checking, because the worst thing that's going to happen is that you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're not paying any fees, and essentially it's all good. So got a great question here from Lauren. G'day, Lauren. So what's the best piece of financial advice that you've ever been given?
That's such a good question.
Great question.
Thanks, Lauren.
You go first, mate.
Me go first.
You go.
All right. So when I left school, when I was a spray painter, I went and got a job at a panel shop, and one of the bosses at the panel shop was a very active property investor. I was 15, and he was the first person to ever teach me about money. And he taught me a few things, and number one was essentially to buy as much property as you could buy. Right, that was sort of his number one thing, that whenever you can afford to buy property, you buy it. And just, he wished that he had bought 10 times as much that he did and gone to 10 times the amount of debt that he got himself into. You know, he started buying property on the northern beaches, 60 or 70 years ago, and had just kept going for 60 or 70 years. So you can imagine how well he done off the back of it. So that was one of the best things that he taught me: buy as much property as you can, and don't stop. Another thing that he taught me was to always increase your income. I remember whinging to him one day that as a spray painter, I couldn't earn anymore. And he basically said to me that you need to find ways to continue to increase your income. And his advice at the time was actually to go and do something else for a living where you had more capacity to earn more. He actually suggested that I go and become an accountant. You know, a couple of years later, I became a finance broker, and he had a good giggle about it, right? But essentially, that translated into being a business owner as well. Eventually you're going to need to go into business for yourself because that's where you're essentially limitless around how much money you can earn. So that was another piece of his advice, to continue to earn more all the time, so never to stop. And the third was buy shares in a time of chaos. Right, so essentially he would accumulate a lot of shares, and I went with him one day to a dog park, out of all places, and on a Sunday, and it was the middle of the GFC, and I said to him, you know, how much, you know, have you lost millions and this and that? And his advice was, what do you think I'd done? You know, I sunk nearly double whatever I've lost back into it. This was at the low of the GFC. So a few years later, imagine how well he had done off the back of it. So essentially his advice around stock market investing was buy as much stocks as you can. And if the markets crash, buy even more stocks. Don't sell the stocks. Buy as many, borrow money from wherever you can get. Just buy more stocks. Go to work harder, get more money, and buy more stocks. So essentially the three things he taught me: buy as much property as you can, earn as much money as you can, and then buy as much stocks as you can. That was it. That's the best advice I've ever been given, and that's essentially what I live by still to this day.
Yeah, so I got two good pieces of advice. My old man always told me to stick to what you know and outsource everything else. So I've kind of lived by that for a long time. Although it's not specific financial advice, I do that through all aspects of our business, through my life, and also in regards to the advice that I give to my clients. I don't try and be the master of all. I can't know everything. I know a little bit of everything, but I stick to what I know and I outsource everything else. The other advice that I got was from a mentor that I had back in the day. He said, live for today and plan for tomorrow. So you shouldn't always be trying to compromise and then put everything away for tomorrow, because tomorrow may never come. You need to have balance. My mantra is simple, sustainable, and scalable. We use this with all of our clients. And sustainability is a big part of achieving financial freedom. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So you just need to be mindful that you got to live a life too. You got to take some chips off the table.
That's good. That's a good question. Some good answers.
Like that.
I hope that provides some value.
Alrighty.
All right.
I think we've got one more, mate.
This one's for you, mate. It's definitely not for me.
All right. So, Jackson, how did you grow such a sick top knot?
Show the people, Jackson.
Look at the top knot.
Hey, look.
I just didn't cut my hair. I've never grown my hair long in my whole life, and I've always kind of kept it short and kind of like tried to keep it pretty well tamed. That sometimes it would get a bit long and I'd chop it a lot. Yeah, stuff it. I'm going to grow my hair long, so I'm just not going to cut it. So I just go to my barber, and she kind of shaves the sides of my head, makes me look like a Viking. And I get a thing and I put it in.
So how long is it when it's not tied up?
It's about here.
Is it really?
It's intense.
Are you going to, for my 30th, you're going to wear it out?
I'll get it braided. I'll be like Ragnar Lothbrok. I'll come with my axe.
Oh, no.
I'll storm the beach in my longboat.
This is so good. Hey, there's Big Sal. Big Sal, come say good day. Come say good day.
Big Sal's here.
Big Sal just got to work. He's 12 hours late today. There he goes.
All right, everyone. So
we're going to wrap it up.
That's pretty much it. So thanks everyone who's asked some great questions. For those of you who are watching when we go offline, feel free to ask your questions. We'll flick you a message to get you an answer, but we'll also chuck it on the list so we can cover it for everyone else next week. And we will see you the same place, same time.
Catch you then.
Catch you then.
Thanks, guys.